Tupac's unsolved murder is a stark reminder of the dangers of the rap game, but it was also a vital domino piece in the eventual collapse of the West Coast versus East Coast feud that had already taken so many lives. But despite the widespread coverage of his murder and the long-standing memory of his reputation and influence in the music landscape, there is still mystery around the exact circumstances. But did that contribute to his legacy or symbolize it? And is the murder as unsolved as the mainstream narrative suggests? To untangle this riddle, we need to understand the backdrop of the entire tragedy. The rivalry between individual rappers and different music scenes was more than diss tracks and insults. Tensions would reach boiling points and explode in violence and shootings. It got to the stage where coming from the wrong coast of the US was enough to lower your life expectancy quicker than a 4-day-old Big Mac. No doubt, rivalries help music sales because nothing sees a rise in profit like galvanized fans. But at the same time, it was far from the hollow, contrived disputes of other 90s acts, such as Oasis vs. Blur or Britney Spears vs. Christina Aguilera. The East Coast-West Coast rivalry of the 1990s starts in New York, the city that originated the hip-hop genre. The story goes that New York acts saw their music as inheriting superiority because they invent the music, with the West Coast adopting an inferiority complex as a result. Fronting the Big Apple's music scene were icons like the Notorious B.I.G. and Puff Daddy, whereas Tupac was one of the focal points of West Coast music. He had been having stellar access with the release of 2 albums and 3 movie appearances, but money issues, as well as his impending prison experience relating to sexual offenses, were making his life hard. And so, on November 30th, 1994, Tupac went to record a verse with another rapper, Lil Sean, to help pay for legal fees when gunmen ambushed the lobby. Tupac was shot 5 times and robbed, but thankfully he would live to tell the tale, even going so far as to flip the bird to Biggie and other affiliates of the gunmen whilst being taken out on a stretcher. You have to hand it to the guy, he knew how to make an exit. Although Tupac publicly blamed the likes of Puff Daddy and other members of the quote bad boy group for the attempt on his life, this hatchet was buried between the two. But this truce wouldn't last long. Biggie released Who Shot Ya shortly after, which Tupac interpreted as taunting, thereby proving their involvement. However, Biggie and his team claimed the song had been in the recording process before the shooting. This tit-for-tat squabbling would go on and give Prince William and Harry a run for their money. There were even fights at award ceremonies where producers and artists used their stage time to hurl insults at each other. Naturally, some voices did use their platform to ask for peace, but this was to no avail. And then things got really heated between Tupac and Biggie when a girl got in the way, because what would a war be without a love triangle? Faith Evans was the estranged wife of Biggie Smalls, and, following an encounter with Tupac at a party, she agreed to sing on one of his tracks for $250,000. Not bad for a half-day's work. The story goes that after the recording, Tupac refused to pay her unless she slept with him. Now, whether or not that's true or a rumor designed to get under Biggie's skin can't be known. But either way, it certainly made the relationship between the East Coast and West Coast even worse. Bodies had been piling up throughout all of this, so it was only a matter of time until a big artist would be the next one to head to the cemetery. September 7th, 1996. Tupac and Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight attend a Mike Tyson boxing match in Las Vegas, knowing it would be over faster than an all-you-can-eat buffet when Biggie Smalls is in town. Knight and Tupac left the fight together, but on their way out, an altercation broke out in the MGM casino lobby between Tupac's bodyguards and Orlando Andersson, a member of the Southside-based Crips gang. It's worth noting that some members of the Death Row entourage were members of the Bloods, so the moment they saw Orlando standing against a wall, they recognized him from another fight earlier that year. Despite inheriting the grudge, Tupac was the first one to throw a punch. A melee ensued, which lasts only 12 seconds, and the death row entourage made a swift exit. But this encounter had possibly set up Tupac's final moments. Shortly after, the West Coast boys split into two cars to begin enjoying their night, with Suge and Tupac sharing a vehicle. In fact, an unrelated police stop on the LA Strip would create the last photo of Tupac that was ever taken. Afterwards, the vehicle turned onto Flamingo Street. Suge and Tupac's car was waiting at a traffic light in the central lane and were conversing with a car of four women on the right side. But when these women pulled forward, another vehicle came up to their side and unloaded 12 to 14 shots. The car sped away before anyone had time to realize those bangs weren't fireworks. The first police officer on the scene was LVPD Sergeant Chris Carroll. According to his account, he approached the vehicle and opened the car door, and out fell Tupac, covered in blood. He asked the rapper, "Who shot you?" To which Tupac replied, "Fuck you." These were the final words of the 25-year-old hip-hop artist. Like we said, the guy knew how to make an exit. Las Vegas is a busy city. A typical Friday night at 11 p.m. sees multiple lanes of traffic intersecting, and a Mike Tyson fight would be even busier. So these assassins would have acted with plenty of witnesses. Yet no one has ever been arrested for the murder. Yaki Gaddafi was a member of Tupac's entourage and claimed that he'd be able to identify the assailant, but the cops never followed up with him. 2 months later, Gaddafi was murdered in an unrelated gangland shooting, or at least people say it was unrelated. That was the case's last viable lead, and so the investigation has gone cold in the subsequent years. But there are still plenty of theories and suspects. An obvious one is that Orlando Andersson himself was part of the murder, either as a gunman or a getaway driver. Being a member of the Crips would have given him the resources to pull it off, and if you were to believe that Biggie Smalls had a hand in supplying the gun, then it seems the most likely answer. According to investigative journalists, neither Biggie nor anyone connected to him was interviewed by the police. Asking Orlando Andersson wouldn't be possible, as he passed away in 1998 from a shooting, but he did publicly deny involvement up until his death. But was that just self-preservation against revenge attacks? A wilder theory is that Suge Knight himself orchestrated the hit, despite being struck in the shooting when a bullet grazed his head. It was said that Suge Knight owed Tupac a lot of money, and in fact, Tupac's mother would eventually sue Death Row Records for mishandling Tupac's money. In fact, when everyone was fleeing the fight in the casino lobby, Suge Knight stopped to make a phone call and insisted that Tupac ride in his car. Did the assassins know which side of the car Tupac was on, or did they just fire into the car randomly? Puff Daddy has also been accused of having a hand in ending Tupac's life. Crips gang member Keith Davis went on tape to say that the Puff father himself paid $1 million to get it done. Given that Keith Davis is the uncle of Orlando Andersson, things don't look good for P. Diddy. This theory goes that Tupac wasn't the intended target, and that Suge Knight was the real objective with the award show beef as the motivation. In fact, in 2011, Dexter Isaac, now serving a life sentence in prison, admitted that it had been P. Diddy who hired him and others to rob Tupac in the second studio lobby all those years ago. But the craziest theory is that the Jewish Defense League did it. Yeah, really. Apparently, the FBI has a file of beef between Tupac and the right-wing extremist group. They had sent him multiple death threats, so had motive. But is this theory any wilder than the conspiracy that Tupac is still alive? Either way, Tupac's unsolved murder is now as famous as his music. So if you do have any theories of your own, then be sure to share them in the comments below. If you'd like us to cover more unsolved mysteries, then please leave a like and share this with a music fan. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.